Flour, water, salt, and yeast. That's all we need to make some bread. Flour, water, salt, and yeast. Okay, let's make some bread. We've got a sourdough starter. You've done that. You've accomplished it. You have a gluey mass that is now yours, and you're excited. And this is the first science project is complete. Good job. I'm very proud of you. See, this is fun. It's not so bad. Okay, now you want to bake some bread. You have to think about time. You have to think about time. That's kind of the big thing you'll see as we go through this, because you have a life. You're not just sitting around for 3 days tending to your bread. So you've got to kind of figure out exactly where this is all going to fit in your life, because you have to, from the moment you take out this sourdough starter and put it in your little bowl and start to feed it, you're now getting into the process of baking bread. That is going to take about 1.5 to 2 days before it's really active and ready to go. Then from that point, you're going to get your flour and your salt and your water and add the yeast to it. And that is going to take, once you get into that moment, that's going to take about 3 to 4 hours before you're dumping the dough onto your counter, shaping it into actual bread. And then you have to put it in the refrigerator. We'll get into whether or not you have to do that later, overnight. And then you are going to, whenever you take it out the next day, then you're going to need an hour, hour and a half to actually bake it in the oven. So you're starting off feeding this thing to the time that the bread actually comes out of your oven. You're really talking about a 2 to 3 day kind of thing, which sounds kind of weird and like, well, I don't have that kind of time. You do. You're living in your house, you're around. As long as you're not traveling, you can kind of fold it into your day, but you've got to plan it out. And there's different ways to speed it up and to slow it down, and we can get into all of that. So let's stick with the basics now and just bake some bread. Now, the measurements for bread. We want to get to 1,000 grams. You want to go from 1,000 grams of whatever flour you use. This is cool too. Get yourself some scoops. I know, it sounds weird. I didn't have them for a long time. They're like professional baker ones. I'll show you the other giant size. I'll show you the other giant size now. When you get really crazy, you're going to start having flour that comes in stuff like this. I've ordered this flour from Utah, and then I put it, it comes in these giant sacks, and then I put it in here, pour it into this. Look at the size of that scoop. Oh, that's heaven. That is, isn't that sexy? It's a sexy scoop. Oh, look at that. Come on. So this is where I keep all my wheat flour. And then the all-purpose flour I use kind of as a base. I want to do, just for this one, for fun, we're going to do about 600 grams of the white flour. I add a little wheat to it. Now your ratios and what you're going to do is all different. Let's just stick, you could just do all white for now. Just get to 1,000 grams. That's all you have to worry about at this point. We're just showing you how to bake bread, and then we'll get into making great bread later on. This is just for process. There are people that nail it right off the bat. Maya, behind the camera, she made bread and came in and showed me like her first try, and it was a stellar kick-ass loaf. Really made me wonder why I was even making these videos. I'm like, oh, if it's that easy. Okay, now to 1,000 grams of flour, I want you to add 700 grams of water. Did you hear what I said? 700 grams of water. That's going to give you 70% water. The lower the amount of water, the lower the percentage of hydration, the more dense your bread's going to be. And then you get up around 700, that's 70% water. That's pretty hydrated. People take real pride in the the hydration of their bread, and you can tell that it's really hydrated by how many bubbles are in it. It's like my holes are bigger than yours kind of a thing. I get it. I mean, it's cool. You know, you see on Instagram, once you start following other people that bake bread, it's like they crack it open and it's like, look how porous it is. That shows a sense of pride in a couple different ways. You have to have really good technique to form it into bread. If you see someone like a bread that has tons of holes, you know it was really hydrated. That means that that baker has been baking bread for a while and really knows how to handle it. Cool, but when you slice bread that has big holes in it, it's a slice with big holes in it. So if you put tuna on it or butter or whatever, it comes through the other side. If you just want to make a sandwich, you can't have gigantic holes in it. It just can't happen. My family is like, Dad, I tried to put avocado on it and I'm at school and it's all coming out on my lap. So let's stick around 70%. Wash your hands. You're going to use your hands. When you bake stuff, when you make anything, when you cook, it has an essence of you in it. You are putting your heart and soul into it. I had this show on the Food Network, and I went and visited bakers all around the country. And it only ran for one season. I don't know what happened. I don't know if Guy Fieri wanted me off the air, and everybody else was Cupcake Wars and that kind of thing. I was the only show other than Diners and Drive-Ins that was running around talking to people. Something politically happened because people loved the show and they didn't make any more. But while I would go and visit all these bakers, what makes these places great, what makes a bakery change a community, what makes it really popular, is the heart and soul of the people that are making it. I know it sounds weird, but you can actually feel the love that some of these people have in the end product that they make. So get your hands dirty, put your hands in it, mix it. This is a part of you. I'm telling you, it's getting this deep involved, loving it. It actually comes out in the final product. Look at that. We've just mixed flour and water. Now this is a thing that I don't totally understand, but it does make a difference. When you first put the flour and the water together and leave it, this is a step called autolyse. Autolyse is, I think beforehand, people would just mix it together and keep going and mix all the ingredients and go. They tell you to take a pause at this moment. Once it's all together, the flour and water, leave it. Partially cover it and leave it for about 20 to 30 minutes. Why? From my limited understanding, it's that the flour absorbs all of the water. It gives it more time to actually absorb it and be a fuller product in the end. It does seem to make a difference in the bread. When you rush it and move along kind of quickly in any stage of bread, it kind of makes trouble. This, I think, is purely, it makes it just a better end product because the flour is able to absorb. So once we first mixed, that's all you do. 20 minutes. Time. Time is a huge, huge factor. Here's the mistake that I make a lot when I'm baking bread. If I make a mistake, it's usually because of time. You come home and you realize, oh, I've only got this amount of time. I've got to mix it or I have to shape it, and you pull it out early. Anytime I try and rush it, you're in trouble. There are so many different factors. I kind of like bread making because it's very similar to stand-up comedy, and it's kind of unknowable in a certain way. Like you can kind of get close to it. You can get pretty consistent, and then you'll just blow it, and something will go wrong. I've been doing stand-up comedy for a long time, and I think I really have it. And once I get really cocky and I walk into a club and I'm going to try something new, all of a sudden you're reminded that it's bigger than you are. And you end up telling jokes and nobody likes them. It's exciting. It's kind of what makes it a fun thing to do because you always have to be on your toes. Same with baking bread. That's like you can get really good at making a certain way and then you try and change one little element and it all falls apart. You can literally eat your mistakes. So it's not that bad. All right, so 20 minutes, leave it. So we're back. You have spent 20 minutes. You went, maybe you did some crunches. Maybe you did all your likes on the gram. I don't know what you did for 20 minutes, but now you come back. It's time to add your sourdough, starter, and salt. Get yourself a nice wooden spoon. This is another thing that you'll want to collect. If you start getting into it, this is, I'll show you. I have a bit of a problem. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. They all have their own use, and I love them all for different reasons. Look at this little baby one, adorable. There's something about wood too that just makes me happy. This is a bread whisk. These flat ones are great for when we take them out of the oven. It's just, I can't tell you, this makes me so happy. Maya thinks there's something wrong with me. There is. All right. This came to me as a gift, and it's quickly become my favorite. Okay, so you've got your sourdough starter. It's big and it's active. You got your dough, your flour and water all mixed. It's been sitting for 20 minutes. Now it's time to add the starter. Does it make sense why it's called starter? Because now we're starting to bake the bread. Isn't that amazing how it's all worked out that way? Okay, so 200 grams of starter. Another joy I have is when I nail it exactly on the scale. 200, come on, perfect. Put that to the side. Now, do you remember when we put in how many grams of water in the beginning? Do you remember? 700, exactly. Because we're learning, let's just add 30 grams. Let's make it, so that'll be 730 grams total water. Mix it together like a little soup. That's 73% hydration, which is good. It'll give you some holes. You'll be able to think that you're cool. Okay, now I have not figured out which is the best way to do this. I don't know if this makes a difference. I've actually made a little bit of a change recently. We have to add salt. Salt adds to the pliability of it. It adds to the flavor of it. It breaks stuff down. It's important. Make bread without salt. Give that a try, and no one will like it. You need 2 tablespoons of salt. I just got this. This is literally a 2 tablespoon size measure thing, mabob. Yeah, because a lot of times it's 1 and you gotta do it twice. Now I can just do it once. It's so cool. Here's something you don't do. Don't measure it out over either one of them, because sometimes you'll slip and you get too much and you can't measure that out. And it's a mistake only dumb people make. And I've made it a whole bunch of times. All right, which way, where are you gonna put it? Maya, what would you do? Would you go into there or would you go into there? Yeah, all right. I like this, I actually like it. This is the way I normally do it. I just started putting it in there because I saw someone else do it. It's not as satisfying actually, because this is like, you just see it sprinkle and you can spread it out. Take your little sourdough starter, water concoction, your little soup. It's all kind of broken down a little bit. Now we take our concoction and we pour it. The yeast is now being added to the flour, water, and salt. Bravo. All right, now we mix it all together. Put your hands back in it. Get your soul and your heart back involved. Now this is something that you're going to want to learn. It's a very simple technique, but it's something that will help you. It's called the pincer method. You want to take your little pincer, your little claw, your little crab-like claw. Do that along your floury, doughy mass, and it's a way to cut it all in as you go along. Do that a bunch of times. It'll get all incorporated. And you can kind of feel it. You're basically mixing dough. Here's a fun part. You've done it in Big Mama. You've had your little sourdough starter little bin. And now here comes number 3. Some people use flat square ones. Clear is good. It's always good to use clear ones because you can see how everything's fermenting, see air bubbles. Stick it in there. And this is where, over the next 4 hours, it's going to rise. It's going to sit in here now for 4 hours. 4 hours. It's kind of a long time.